Your passion becomes a purpose when you use it in the service of others. When you identify what you're good at, what you love, your wiring, your qualities, your values, your skills, your abilities, and you use that to make a difference in the life of other people, that's when you're going to feel most fulfilled. Fulfillment is not just about doing good. It's about becoming better and then doing good with what you have. People often ask me about my meditation routine or my morning routine. I meditate for 2 hours a day. I have done for the last 13 years. One of my favorite meditation practices that I do, which is the smallest and shortest part of my meditation, is that I refine my intention. What I mean by that is every day I write down thoughts in my mind. So every day I'm literally gardening my heart. We're wired for generosity, but we're educated for greed. And we're so deeply wired for generosity, but everything's trying to pull us away from that. We've been told 2 lies in our life. The first lie is, you're nothing. The second lie we've all been told is you can be anything. It's a lie. The way we're wired defines what we can do with that wiring. And therefore the truth is, you can't be anything you want, but you can be everything you are.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them for me, because I want to wake up every day and watch a video that puts me in a mindset to believe in myself more and go off and accomplish amazing things and attack the day. And I hope that this video does that for you as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jay Shetty, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is master your mind.
How many of you feel like if you could master your mind, that would sort your life out, right? Like how many of you think that the conversation happening in your mind is slowing you down? Does my boss like me? Are they impressed by me? Does my manager understand me? Does my team really get me? Are we collaborative? Are we focused? Oh my God, I'm tired today. Like all of that's all happening up here, right? So actually what's happening here is minimal. So when you're making long-term plans, it's like the best long-term plan you can make is let me learn a lot all the time. Because if you're doing that, then you'll never be thrown off. But if we go, this is how it's going to be, I'm going to do this is how it's going to work, then you start limiting yourself and making your life harder. So I would say, don't worry about that big, elusive, intangible purpose. Find your little micro purpose, get working on it, and let it teach you more, and let it teach you more. And guess what? Purpose is always evolving. It's changing, right? It's not something that you figure out and then that's it. There's nothing in life that you figure out and that's it, right? Don't wait for someone to spot your talents. Like, don't wait for someone to come and find you and discover you. Be someone who's constantly displaying your strengths and putting them on show, even if that's not your day job. Just constantly be doing that, because the more you do that, the more someone will spot you and the more you give someone an opportunity to do that. Don't try and defend your skills, demonstrate them, display them, show them. But at the same time, I think it's our responsibility to pave our own path. And it's our responsibility to take risks. It's our responsibility to experiment. We can't expect anyone to draw that path for us. And you've got to take responsibility for every decision in your life. And when you do, it builds your confidence because you chose to do that. And when you chose to do something, you start valuing your opinion rather than always looking for someone to make the right decisions for you.
Rule number 3 is learn to love yourself.
I find that if you're doing the work to learn to love yourself, that process and that skill helps you learn to love someone else. Let me give an example. Like, if I'm learning to love myself, it means I have to get to know my dark side. It means I have to get to know my flaws. It means I have to get to know parts of myself that make me feel uncomfortable. Now, if I recognize that I have all of that in me, now when I meet someone else, I'm not surprised when they have it in them because I've already seen it in myself. And I think often if we think, oh, like I'm gonna meet someone and they're not gonna have any issues or they're not gonna have any challenges, it's partly because we haven't necessarily worked through our own. And so I think if your trauma is more visible to you, if your pain and your stress of the past is more visible to you, you're actually better at being compassionate to someone else's because you can see it's something that connects us.
Rule number 4 is embrace people as they are.
We're living in a world of trying to project our version of a perfect partner onto our partner. And we're trying to mold them and curate them and build them up to be this person that we think will make us happy. And what we don't realize is that fake version we have won't make us happy. And us trying to mold them is not going to make them happy. And you actually push someone away. So I actually feel like if anyone ever feels like someone's trying to change them, you potentially push them away because they feel threatened, they feel scared, they feel
not
fearful,
good enough.
not good enough. And so you're actually creating a unworthy feeling in your partner by saying you could be this or should be this. And I think we have this, I break it down in the book as being the difference between relationship roles we play. So I talk about how there's 3 relationship roles that everyone plays, and everyone who's listening or watching, you know which one you are. So the first is the fixer. Some of us get our self-worth from fixing other people's problems. We don't fix our own, we're not working on our own, but we feel better when we find a partner that feels like a project. We feel, oh, I'll teach them and I'll build them up and I'll make them wear nice clothes and I'll make sure he or she gets a nice job or they break through in their career, because we get our self-worth through thinking we can fix other people. It's really warped to that degree, but we play that role. And often when we play that role, we tire our partner out because they feel unworthy, or we feel upset at ourselves and them because they didn't take our advice. So then we end up saying things like, well, I put so much effort into you and you don't want to be better. And we think it's their fault that they haven't grown, but they never showed you they wanted to grow. So if you're the fixer, I just want you to be really conscious about that role and say, okay, I've tried to fix people, it doesn't work. Let me use that energy to serve myself, to find my own self-worth in a different direction, and now let me approach this relationship differently. The second role we play is the dependent. So the fixer is like a parent, the dependent's like a kid. You walk in and you hope that your partner's just gonna take care of you, they're gonna cradle you, they're gonna embrace you, they're gonna take all your problems away, right? We want a problem solver. We want a fixer. And we walk in, we go, fix all my issues, you're in charge, you're the best. A few years later, sometimes it's decades later, that person goes, I lost myself in the relationship. Not realizing that they didn't know who they were in the first place. They let the other person take the lead, and now that person's lost. So even when you're the dependent, and then you start feeling, why are you always telling me what to do?
Oh God, yeah.
Right? Because then it goes the other way. Why are you always telling me what to do? But we set them up to play that role. So let's take the responsibility and become supporters. A supporter says, I'm gonna help you become who you want to be. And you're gonna help me become who I want to be. Because support is not about me projecting my goals onto you. Support is about me helping you get to where you wanna go. And that is the healthiest role to play in a relationship.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is change your behavior.
There's that famous quote that we hear all the time and share all the time, and it's, the best apology is changed behavior. And I love that, because to me, that's the only way that you forgive yourself. The only way you forgive yourself is if you actually change your behavior. And if you don't see yourself change your behavior, you can't forgive yourself. You constantly make yourself feel shameful and guilty because you know you haven't really done the work.
Right.
Well, it's almost like if guilt's on one side, the bridge is forgiveness, and on the other side is growth.
Yeah.
Self-forgiveness. And so you've got these 2 points of guilt and growth, and self-forgiveness is in the middle, but self-forgiveness requires change of behavior.
Right.
And that gets you from guilt to growth.
Rule number 6 is stop looking for sparks.
The first date has to be about, do I like this person's personality? Do I get along with them? Do I like their company? Most of our time in a date is spent thinking, do they like me? Right? That's what we're thinking. Do they like me? Are they impressed by me? Do they think I look good? Do they think that I'm a good person?
So true.
But we're not really thinking like, do I like spending time with the person? Do I really engage with them? Do I really connect with them? Do I feel this person has like great morals and great sense of company? Are they funny? Are they interesting? And I think for a long time, we've overestimated the spark. And I want to talk about this because I'm not saying there should be no spark. I think the problem is when relationships are built on sparks, not skills. And I think what you're really looking for is there a spark and skills, or am I only seeing spark and no skills? And the problem is when we see a spark, we assume that the person has the skills.
And when you say the skills, you mean?
I mean, like when we get to skills, I'm talking like, does this person know how to communicate with you?
Right.
Does this person know how to listen to you? Does this person know how to make you feel seen and heard? Does this person want to develop skills with you of fighting better, disagreeing better, debating better? Are they wanting to grow them even if they don't have them? And what I find is that when we find the spark with someone, when we feel chemistry with someone, we assume that they're organized, good people who will treat us well, right? We've all done that. You find someone attractive and you find someone articulate and you think they must be amazing at everything. And you just assume that. You never ask, you never check. So that's date one. Do you like their company? And the way the test is, do I want to spend 200 hours getting to know this person? It's a great test, 200 hours, because that's what a long-term relationship's gonna need.
Rule number 7 is kickstart your morning with tea.
The first thing I consume at the beginning of the day is a cup of tea. I find that tea has this unique ability to start your day with stillness. There are so many benefits to having a cup of tea in the morning: stress alleviation, immune system support, and detoxifying. It all starts with the process of heating up the water. Now, I'm old school, I don't use a kettle. I was always taught to heat up my water like this on a stove. And for me, this is where the mindful process begins. From filling it up, to watching the water, to watching it heat up. Once the tea is poured, I take a moment to inhale the scent. This is such a mindful and meditative practice. If you're someone that struggles with being in the moment or meditating, this is a great way to start. Start by looking at the color of the tea, then by inhaling and taking in the beautiful scent, and then taking a sip. I promise you, it's an experiment in presence, and you'll be so engaged and so involved that you'll recognize what it feels like to live in the now. This is one of my favorite ways to start the day because my mind is at ease, it's calm, it's peaceful, and at the same time, my body feels like it's getting this warm hug and that I'm feeling the energy all across my body.
Rule number 8 is let go of fears.
You talked about the fear of fear and how you had to learn to let go of your fear of fear. What does that actually mean, letting go of the fear of fear?
Yeah, so I talk about how we fear the wrong things.
What do we fear?
So most of us are fearful of how our friends are reacting, what's happening on social media, and what's the random bit of news that we heard. None of it is fact-based. That's one of the biggest issues that we have. It's worry-based. It's worry-based, and it's also imagination-based. So we become fiction writers. We've all watched too many movies. Now we start writing these beautiful movies in our head. Well, not beautiful, scary movies in our head of what may happen. So our imagination, and Seneca said it best, we suffer twice. One in reality and one in imagination, right? We suffer twice. And this is the biggest...
What actually happens to us, and then the story we continue to tell ourselves.
Totally. Now there's this incredible study in the book that I have to talk about. So they took monks and they took non-monks and they
competed against each other.
They competed against each other, literally. So they put this plate where you experience heat. And so what happens is the non-monks touch this plate. Now this plate heats up gradually, softly, and then at one point it gets really hot for 10 seconds and then it cools down. And so what happened is that when the non-monks touched it, the anxiety and pressure and stress in their brain just triggered straight away, even though it wasn't that hot.
It wasn't hot.
It was heating, but it wasn't hot to do anything major to you. But the anxiety and stress in imagination or in anticipation went through the roof in the non-monks. Now this is what's fascinating. When the monks touched it, they showed that it didn't feel anything as it rose, but as it got to its highest, they felt physical pain, but they showed no trigger of emotional pain because they did not assign any emotional element to that pain. So my point with that is, you can look at the news right now and you can get scared straight away and get in complete freeze mode, feeling stuck, paralyzed, whatever it is, because what you're now doing is you're creating a story of what's going to happen. And that story...
And you can cause sickness in yourself.
You can cause sickness
just by the
inside
story,
yourself.
not actually
the reality.
The facts of the disease hitting you or something happening physically to you.
Totally. And that story, again, can be used positively. So your story may actually be true. But if it's going to be true, now you can prepare. And that shifts you away from being scared because now you're preparing.
Yes.
And so the real
you can be confident because you prepared.
Exactly. And so we should be shifting our fear energy into preparation energy. Because what fear does is it keeps you locked there, right? We just feel stuck. I'll give you an example. Like when you were preparing for big games, when you used to play in the NFL, right? And you're playing American football against some of the biggest athletes in the world. It's like you can either sit there and be scared that you're going to play this game on the weekend, or you can prepare. And your confidence is in the preparation. So when people go, how do I feel confident right now? Are you preparing?
Are you putting the reps?
Are you putting the reps?
Yeah.
Are you building your immunity? Are you taking your vitamins? Are you
drinking lots of water?
Are you drinking lots of water? Are you taking the steps that are needed to prepare for whatever's coming? You will feel more confident that way.
Rule number 9 is build deep relationships.
And I share 4 E's in the book for growing intimacy in a relationship. And this is how your intimacy has to change. So, the base level of spending time with someone is doing entertainment together. Far too many couples, the only time they spend together is watching a show. That is a very low vibration of intimacy. Why? It's a very low shared experience. When you watch a show together, it's not deeply meaningful. And your response to it is not deeply meaningful. You watch it, you say, oh, that was a good episode. Yeah, great. All right, let's go sleep, right? And that's what we connected on that day. We connected on something shallow in a shallow way. How does that create depth and intimacy? I'm not saying don't go to the movies. I go to the movies with Radhi. I do a lot of entertaining things, but that can't be your only form of connection. Like, well, we spend 2 hours together every night. Well, no, you don't. You watch 2 hours of TV together every night. Intimacy dips as the vibration dips. The vibration of connecting over entertainment is so futile that it does not create a deep relationship. Better than entertainment is experiments and experiences together. Let's go experiment. Let's go try pottery. We've never done that before. The definition, let's go try archery. We've never done that before. Let's go, I don't know, to a VR room or an escape room. Let's go do something we've never done before. What this does is it puts you on an equal playing field. Most of the time what happens in our relationship is we do something our partners knows more about, so they're teaching us, or we do something we know more about, so we're teaching them. I.e., if me and Radhi are in the kitchen and she's teaching me about herbs, I know nothing, she's the expert. If, I don't know what I know more than Radhi, but if I'm doing something else, I'm teaching her, right? And what ends up happening in that is we're not having a shared experience. Because one person is the expert, one person's the student. There's no shared experience there. One person's teaching, the other person's learning. So when you go and do something that neither of you are good at, you're on a level playing field. Now you're truly having a shared experience.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is give yourself grace.
How does someone like yourself
Yeah.
and others learn to realize the season of life and the things that you did you're not proud of, but also not live in shame to where it affects you today and hurts you internally?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things is recognizing that you didn't ever get taught. Like no one ever gave me this lesson. Like no one sat me down in my teens and said, look, because you were insecure when you were younger, now this is what's gonna happen and you have got to avoid this. Like we never went to a class about that. We never got coaching on that. I never had therapy when I was 14 years old to understand that. So I think you have to give yourself grace and space to say, I didn't know better, right? I think accepting, I didn't know any better. When I know better, I can do better. And that's a great way to give yourself grace because you're not just giving yourself an excuse. You're saying, when I learn, when I grow, when I know better, I'll live up to that standard. But when I didn't know, and I wasn't even aware that that's how trauma and insecurity worked, how could I possibly have controlled that?
I think it's so valuable to have that, that space, you know, it's just, even if it feels comparatively like nothingness, but I do think there are things happening that we might not be able to express or identify that kind of prepare us for that next wave of creativity.
Yeah, and I also feel like, you know, for me, it's my meditation in the morning. I feel like that stillness you need stillness in your day. So there's a beautiful Buddhist statement that says, what movement does for the body, stillness does for the mind. So we all know we need to exercise and move our bodies to feel healthy and fit. And so when you need to move your body, you need to still your mind. And so finding 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, an hour a day, whatever it is for you, like getting space and stillness will always feel like you're a sponge for creativity, because you're allowing your body and your mind to be aligned and talk to you. And I know that sounds strange, but it's kind of like, let's say both of you work as a team. You're a great partnership. But let's say, Lindsay, you're like running around and you're unreachable and you never turn up to meetings. And now how are you going to feel?
Pissed.
Yeah. and you're going to feel like, slow down so I can talk to you.
Yeah.
Your body and mind feel that every day. Like they're just waiting for you to slow down so that they can give you an idea, so that they can get back in sync, so they can give you a signal.
What's your rituals, your morning routine? How does that pan out for you?
So I love waking up in LA because I love the blue skies, and I can usually see the blue skies. I can usually see the sun. I can usually hear some birds outside. It's pretty beautiful and spectacular. And then my morning routine, about 5 out of 7 days a week, is I wake up at about 6 a.m. every day. And then I'll be meditating from about 6:15 till about 8:15. That's usually my schedule of 2 hours of meditation.
2 hours?
Yeah, every single morning. So I've been doing my 1.5 hour to 2 hour meditation practice for the last 15 years. So it varies. Sometimes it can be 1.5 hours, sometimes it's 2. And that takes me through to about 8:15, which is when I go to the gym. And then I'll be in the gym or exercising or on a hike or something activity based for about 45 minutes. And then I begin my work day with breakfast, and then everything continues from there. So my real core parts of my morning routine are my meditation, which includes things like setting my intention for the day, getting myself primed and ready. And then I really enjoy working out now in the morning, which never used to be what I was into. But it's been a game changer to actually start the day feeling energized.
People don't understand how much negative emotions can actually affect your day-to-day life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's 3 things that I talk about, which I learned during my time in the monastery. It's in my first book, Think Like a Monk. Our teachers would call it the cancers of the mind. And so they said complaining, comparing, and criticizing were the cancers of the mind. When we complain reoccurringly, we lose control of the situation. When you're complaining, you're basically saying, I can't influence this. So when you lose influence, you lose your ability to transform your life. When you compare, you're setting yourself up for failure, because here's the thing. If you feel ahead of other people, you'll always feel behind other people in both ways.
Right.
So like, if you're like, I'm now feeling ahead of the pack, that means one day you'll feel behind. If you're saying, now I'm number 1, one day you'll feel like number 2. And so when we place these comparisons, we think when we're at the top, it will feel amazing. It won't, because if you lived your life on comparison, even if you're at the top, you're now insecure and unsettled, because you're like, what if I lose this spot? And so comparing, and then criticizing is probably the most obvious one out of all of them. Like, I remember when we were kids, we would watch people on TV, me and my friends, and we'd laugh at like, how's that person on TV? They're not even talented. Like, who are they? Who do they think they are? But then what were we doing? We were just sitting on our couches. So I remember being that kid where we were just so critical of other people. And as time's gone on, I've realized that, but that person tried. They put themselves out there. Yes, they maybe made mistakes. Yeah, they're probably not perfect, but at least they put themselves out there. Whereas I'm just sitting on the couch, criticizing. And so removing complaining, comparing, and criticizing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't open up to your friends. It doesn't mean you can't share how you feel.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying you can't do any of that stuff, but I'm just saying being mindful of that can help.
Do you wake up happy or sad?
I wake up neither. I wake up feeling purposeful and disciplined. So there's some days where I wake up and I'm tired and I'd rather stay in bed, but my discipline gets me out because I have commitments that I believe are important and that are going to get me to where I want to be and who I want to be. And it's worth getting up for those. So then sometimes it's a disciplined day and sometimes it's a purposeful day. I wake up and I feel so connected to my purpose. Kind of like today. I knew I was coming to see you today and I was excited about being with you today and with your incredible team, and I respect what you do so much. So today was a purposeful day. I didn't have to come here out of discipline. I came here out of purpose that I'm going to get a chance to like be myself and share myself with someone, and someone that I've heard so many amazing things about through mutual friends that we both respect. And if I can be that, then that will be amazing. And so purpose and discipline are what I try and wake up with, as opposed to happiness and sadness, because I can't really be happy every day, because sometimes I just got to get through the day and get it done. And I don't experience so much sadness because the emotional mastery training really works, and you don't want to spend so much time in that space either. Paul Tillich, who talked about how there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And he talks about how, or being alone is like the strength of being alone, but loneliness is the weakness of being alone. And it's really interesting that in the English dictionary, we have two words for being alone. One's alone and one's solitude, but we never use the word solitude. So we always say, oh, I'm going to be alone tonight, right? We say, oh no, I'm just going to stay in and be alone tonight. Or if you were at school and lots of people didn't come to your party, you'd always be considered less popular.
A loner.
A loner, exactly. If you're the person at the lunch table who's sitting alone, you're the loner. If you turn up to a wedding and you don't have a +1, it's like, oh, poor you. Like, when are you going to get married? Like, when's your turn?
Yes,
right? Like,
100%.
That's and of course, so that's the language. We've made being alone an enemy. We've made being lonely the enemy. And we all know this. This is common wisdom today, that we can all feel surrounded by so many people and still feel disconnected. That's what we all experience pretty much every single day. So being alone doesn't mean, being alone is not defined by your physical proximity to people. Being alone is defined by how well you understand yourself and how well others understand you. If you don't feel understood by your friends, you will feel alone. If you don't feel you understand yourself, you will feel lonely. So solitude is a space you create to take the time to get to know yourself. You have to really study people's lives. And I think this is something I've always done. And as a reader, you do, and even as an interviewer, you do. When you study someone's life, you actually get to learn from it rather than get carried away with how you feel in the moment. So what I mean by that is, if you study the arc of any successful person in Hollywood, you'll see a sign of success, maybe a rebellion.
Right.
Then you'll see depression, you'll see mental health, you'll see all of this, and you could ignore it and think, oh, that would never happen to me.
Right.
And you think you're the exception.
I would be happy with all of that.
I would be happy with all of that. And I think that that's the mindset that sets us up for failure, where we go, oh, no, I'm special.
Yeah.
Like I'm better. And it's like, well, you're not, you're human. All of us are human. And so I think when you study someone else's life, you actually develop empathy for them and compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
And you think, wait a minute, let me be aware of the natural pitfalls.
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying if one of your friends has been to a country and they had a rough experience, you got to learn from that experience. You don't just go, oh no, that's not going to happen to me.
I'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Just as there's junk food, there's junk media. And junk media is as addictive as junk food, but it's not great for us. This is my belief. If you present people healthy food, but in a way that looks and tastes like junk food, they will switch. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create content that looks and tastes like junk food, but isn't. And it's real media. And so for me, it's like, how can we create that on the platform where people already are? And what you've shown me, and this is my belief in people, I believe people are smarter than we think they are. I believe people are deeper than we think they are. I believe that people are more beautiful than we think they are. And when you deliver content at that level for people, they respond. What we need is for everyone to tell their story authentically. You don't have to go and break a boundary. You telling your story authentically and sincerely is breaking a boundary, because there's no one like you. And so when you do that, you're giving power to someone to be them, right? When you're more you, everyone gets power to be more them. Don't have a to-do list, have a to-be list. Like, who do you want to be today? Because that's where happiness comes from. When you've ticked off everything on your to-do list, but you're really stressed out, are you happy? No, you're not, because we don't get happy by doing, we get happy by being. And so the way you have a to-be list is like, do I want to be kind today? Fine, I'm going to be kind in every interaction. Do I want to be present today? I'm going to be present in every interaction. What are you going to be? That's going to build happiness, satisfaction, and contentment in your life, not I'm going to do X, Y, Z. If we're observant of our friends,
we'll notice patterns in their posting that actually can help us take care of them better. Sometimes people are less open with you and they're more open on social media. Or if you're smart and you really care about someone, you'll actually be able to see from their posts. So if I see from someone's post that they're posting something depressive or sad every day, don't just like or comment on their post. Pick up the phone and call them up, right? It's like actually giving you information. So you're actually learning about that person. Or if you're seeing someone post something happy every day and then they stop posting, that's giving you a pattern as well. So actually I like using the tool as a way of reaching out to people. And I think that shows us and our care as friends is like, can we notice the patterns in our friends posting or whatever they're sharing that can actually help us help them with their mental health? I think as creators, we often read a lot of negative comments. How many of you ever have read negative comments about yourself? Right? And it's not the most fun thing to read. You know, sometimes what we do, and we do this as humans too, is we amplify the negative. So like, literally everyone here could come up to you and be like, you're amazing, I love what you do. And then one person could come up to you and be like, you're pretty average, like I hated your last video. And we go home thinking about that one person who said that bad thing about us. So my advice is respond to every person that leaves a positive comment. And don't worry about debating with the negative people. Like you're trying to convince people that don't have the right energy for you. But one of the mistakes we make is we don't respond to the negative, or we respond to them, but then we forget about the people who actually leave really beautiful, positive comments. And the thing I love about that value is when you read those positive comments, that's great for your value, because now you're not looking at the metric of views or the metric of shares, but you're looking at real impact in someone's life. And ultimately, remember this, you know, there have been some of the worst leaders in the world that have had a lot of followers. And there have been some pretty incredible leaders in the world who had like 7 followers. So that's not necessarily an indication of how powerful you are, who you are, and how amazing you are as a person at all. And I think it's just important to remember that's not really what it's about. We all know that. And it's about the impact you're making on one person's life. And in just that one person can be so much more powerful and meaningful. We've all heard the story, and I'm just sharing it again to give context. We've all heard the story of the 2 wolves or the 2 dogs, however you want to phrase it. And if you haven't, I'll tell it now. It's a story of how inside of us there are 2 dogs, 2 wolves, and they're fighting for supremacy. So inside you, one is the initiator and one is the responding. Your whole life, you've been feeding and listening to the initiator. So your initiating wolf is strong, powerful, bulky, aggressive, because it's been fed well your whole life. And your responsive dog, your responsive wolf, has not been fed, has not been listened to. And so it's weak and feeble and meek and humble and doesn't even stand to fight. So when they two come to fight inside of you, this wolf's just gonna eat that wolf right up. And that's what's happening right now. So for all of us, whatever 2 wolves you're seeing, whether it's your mind and your intelligence, whether it's your intuition versus what your parents say, whether it's expectations of society versus your expectations of yourself, like whatever 2 wolves you have inside of you, the one that wins is the one you feed and the ones you have been feeding. Now, if you're at a point where you are and where I am and where all of us are in different scenarios of our life, where we're trying to shift and start feeding the other one, it's hard because the other one's just been fed more, it's stronger, it's able to push you, it's able to dictate you. And this is where detachment's so key, that detachment doesn't mean that you own nothing. Detachment means that nothing owns you. And most of us have become owned by our darker wolves. Most of us have become owned by the self that we don't want. So that conditioning has been drawn up. The only way to break it is to disrupt the pattern, to really break that. It has to be, and this is why I talk to people about immersive experiences. Like you meditating for 10 minutes a day on a headspace, that's wonderful and I recommend it, but that's not gonna shift this in a drastic way. Right. You are going to have to go and spend a week out in Joshua Tree with the shaman. You are going to have to take a break in Jerusalem, right? We were both in love with Jerusalem. Like instead of going on a holiday this year, you are going to have to go on a 3-day intensive transformative retreat. And the reason why I'm saying all these different things is they all have different budgets. They're all available in different countries. You don't have to go to India and live with monks, but you have to do something, and it has to be immersive. Because when you get immersed in something, then you're giving something the power to break your pattern. Right. And I think the challenge is we're trying to solve it by a little thing every day, which is a good start to get us going. But if you're really serious about a massive shift in your life, wherever you're seeing that energy coming from for the right side, the responsive side, you need to go water that, you need to go feed it, you need to go give it energy. And that's what I think we find that, and that's where I think people struggle. They still want to go on their beach holiday. They're like, no, I can't give that up, I need that. Or this weekend, I still need to go and do up my house. And it's like, well, no, like, just imagine what would happen if this weekend you just went on a 3-day retreat that changed your life. Like, imagine if you just gave that energy. There's a thought I've been having recently, and it's that comfort creates self-care, but discomfort creates self-respect.
Ooh, boy, I love that.
Right? Like, it's what you're saying.
I love
that. The one more discomfort every day,
yes.
That's where self-respect comes from.
Yes.
You don't...
Great term.
You don't start to trust yourself or build self-esteem or believe in yourself because you just say it to yourself.
Amen.
It's coming, what you just said. You go out there and take one more meeting and see what you learn. Yes. You go out there and take one more risk, one more discomfort. The people that I know that are the most successful and happy have more uncomfortable conversations.
Agreed.
They have more uncomfortable days. They have more discomfort in their lives.
Yes, totally agree with that.
But selected discomfort. But one of the other things that I'm asking from now, I'm like going into like the people that I know that I'm thinking about, I can see their faces and I want them to know that I'm asking for them. A lot of the time, one more in the wrong direction
That's right.
can also be really misguiding. Sometimes people, and I know you're a person of faith too, and so we can touch on this. Sometimes we're climbing the mountain and we keep doing one more, but we're actually going further away from who we are, who we want to be, our faith, our partners, right? We know people who've built multi-billion-dollar companies but lost their kids.
That's right.
Or they've become famous and rich, but their partner cheated on them, or like really painful stuff. And you know people who didn't do all of that, and that's happened too. Sure. Like it's both ways. How does one use one more and make sure it's in the right direction?
So, what would you say to somebody though who's in a relationship? Just a tough question. Start out early in a tough one.
Go for it.
But I'm in a relationship. I just heard you say that, and I go, not only is that not our pattern, because sometimes relationships take patterns.
Yeah.
Not only is that not the pattern, but I feel like this person's almost competing against me. And sometimes even though I feel like there's some sort of love there, they really aren't supporting, helping. Not only they're not helping with my goals, they're not supporting the goals that I have. Does that mean you're not in a loving relationship, or are there some strategies you can have to better connect where we get on the same page on that?
I think first place I start is that there are, when I was a monk, I learned about these, what the monks called the 3 cancers of the mind. And they are comparing, complaining, and criticizing. And what I find in relationships is that we're constantly operating in one of these dynamics. You're either complaining about your partner, you're comparing your partner to other people, or you're criticizing your partner.
Wow.
And when you're living in these 3 ways, there's no room for growth. And the problem is, your partner can't be doing anything that I talk about in this book because they never went to that class. They never got to go to that school, and neither did you. So what you just said so beautifully, we just assume people know how to love. Let me just take that idea. Do you just assume someone knows how to drive a car?
Right.
Do you just assume someone knows how to be a doctor? Do you just assume that someone knows how to fly a plane? Like, you would never assume that, but we assume that love's easy.
Right.
Love's easier than driving a car, and love's easier than flying a plane. No, it isn't. It's so much harder. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Right? So if you find in your life, when you reflect about this question, that you're going through the same challenges regularly, remember, a challenge will never go away until you learn what you're meant to learn from it. So if you're seeing the same challenge coming up again and again in your personal lives, realize that it's trying to teach you something. As soon as you extrapolate that lesson, you'll get on to the next challenge, right? They don't go away, but you go up a level, you go up to the next level. So notice that as well. Remember, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. One of the things I found was, if you ask most couples today, what is their most common activity to do together? The majority of people, I think the studies show like 70 to 80%, and I think it's probably more if we really talk to people, the number one thing they do with their partner is watch TV. That is the most common activity.
Yes.
So now two people are watching TV, and we're not that surprised by it. Two people are watching TV, and most likely you both have an iPad or an iPhone in your hand too. So now not only are you in this world, they're in their world, you're also supposedly spending time together in this reality, when the truth is you're definitely not spending time together. But more importantly, you're exchanging zero energy.
Yes.
So what
you're literally going to those devices and that moment to turn off.
Yeah.
To de-stress.
Correct.
But if that's the only way,
that's you're saying
you're turning off the relationship.
You're turning, exactly. And so do your sound effect again.
Oh. It's like you're swiping this.
Yeah. And so like, you're doing all of that really, really fast. I can't do the sound effect, but you're doing all of that really, really fast. But this relationship is not moving anywhere. And so what I created in the book and in my coaching practice is 4 levels of intimacy. And they're 4 E's, and they're escalating levels of intimacy. So entertainment with your partner is the lowest form of intimacy and connection. i.e. watching TV, watching a show. That is not, even me and you, when have me and you ever watched a TV show together? Never. And we would say that, sure, we may not know each other deeply, but we have deep conversations that are intimate, vulnerable, open. We've never watched a TV show together. I've never watched a TV show with Lewis Howes. I've never, even we hang out all the time because we both live in LA. I've never watched a TV show with anyone in that room that I'm friends with.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah. Or a movie for that matter. We've never done that. Every night we'd waste so much time trying to figure out what to watch, find nothing to watch, or find something that really didn't work. And then you're dissatisfied with your relationship because you go to sleep feeling so unfulfilled. So again, I love movies. I even sometimes love video games, but the point is that can't be your point of connecting with your partner. Don't say that is your intimacy building.
That's great.
Right? The next level of the next state of intimacy, escalating one step above, is experiences and experiments. And the way I define this, experiences everyone knows, date nights, restaurants, trying to go out together, trying to make an effort together. And I find even that can get really like exhausting for people and boring, and you still end up on your phones. That's why I add the word experiments. An experiment is where both of you are a beginner. Doing an activity together where both of you are not pros. Maybe you go pottery. Maybe you go kayaking. Maybe you go to a paint class or try painting at home with a YouTube channel. Maybe you're going to try construct something you've never done before. Take an activity where neither of you are professionals or experts, so there's no ego, and I promise you'll learn something new about your partner.
You might learn learning journey.
They have like a little hidden skill. They have a little hidden gem in them. So try and experiment. A step above from that, you'll love this one, is education. Take a course together. Read a book together. And even me and Radhi struggle with this. Read your own books and then discuss about it. That's what me and Radhi do. So 3 nights a week, Radhi will be reading a book she loves or listening to a podcast she loves. I'll be reading a book I love. And then we'll gather together to excitedly share what we learned because we don't like reading the same stuff. So, and then the highest level, which really just escalates so much intimacy and vulnerability in a relationship, is engagement. Go and serve together. Help out a soup kitchen, a homeless shelter. Go to the trenches. Go and serve together, because the connection you're going to have when you've had a shared experience of you've just given a bowl of soup to a child in India together, and you've witnessed the joy on their face and the experience that they're having. The intimacy you feel with your partner, nothing compares to it. So I want people to escalate up that journey and realize there's more things we can do than eat at restaurants and watch TV.
I don't feel like we could be stretching all the time.
Agreed.
That you could reach, but you have to recover. You have to replenish. You have to be able to rest. Also as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to add to that, because I know we both like alliteration, but it's like stretch, stabilize, and then forego. Like there's also what's a sacrifice, I guess. Like, but in a positive sense.
Or even surrender.
Surrender, because I found that I definitely am shocked at my capacity with the amount of things I do today that I didn't know were ever possible. So if someone told me 10 years ago, Jay, one day you're going to do this, I would have said, no way. I can just do one thing. And we did exactly what you said. So every year I would stretch myself. Every year. And you're right. You can't just stretch every month. But every year I'd add one thing. So like first we started creating videos. And then after we started creating videos, we did the podcast. And then we did the podcast, we did our courses and programming. And then then I wrote my book. And then after that, so we stretched ourselves a little, and I stretched myself a little every year. But then we stabilized. But I've also found that I've also had to let go of some things, sacrifice some things that once upon a time were really important to me, but today they're not as important. Yeah. And in order to stretch and stabilize, I had to learn to sacrifice too. And I think that's something we struggle with. Like, I think one of our biggest limitations is wanting to hold on to stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like there's no space to shift away and hold on to something else if we're holding on to this. If I'm like, no, I want this to be there for the rest of my life. Actually, learning can be something that gives you a sense of achievement, sense of drive, sense of momentum, and a feeling like you're moving forward and towards something. When you dabble in articles, books, podcasts, you start to feel this sense of being alive. You have something to share in every conversation. You have something to add. You are more inclined to listen, to learn more, and see how your idea develops. Confidence comes from the ability to engage in a conversation and the feeling that you're moving forward, the feeling that you don't feel stuck or trapped in a space. Learning and consistently learning can truly transform the way you feel about yourself. You start to trust yourself. You think to yourself, wow, I remember this from what I read last week. I was able to apply that idea at work today. When you start to connect the dots around what you're learning and what you're growing in, that makes you feel a sense of confidence. We either put up a facade of confidence, or we hide our insecurities, or we try and find a way to disguise the anxiety that we feel about ourselves in order to cope with the world outside of us. And I think for me, I did that for many, many years. And when I started to feel like I wanted to walk this path, the fear and doubt that came in was fear of failure. There was a doubt around if I had the skills or the ability. And just overall, I think my vision had shrunk. And you're so right. If someone asked me in my teens if this would have been possible, I would have said yes. But if someone asked me in my 20s, I would have said no. And so it's really interesting to see that stark comparison. If you asked me as a 15-year-old if anything could be possible, I would have been much more broad-minded. And at 24, I'd become much more small-minded, because you start thinking as to what's real and what's possible. And you start also looking at the people around you and going, well, where have they got to? And then you start kind of, creating a little hierarchy.
Yeah.
What we say was the word?
The comparison.
The comparison of where I am. That audience was amazing. Like, that was incredible. It was so much fun. I was, I had 3 hours of sleep. I had a sore throat this morning. You heard me, I was whispering. And then on top of that, it was my first time back. And I'm on such a high. Like, I'm such a high. My wife just messaged me and she said, how are you feeling? How are you doing? She knows I left early morning. And I was like, I'm just on a high. Like, I just always feel that way when I'm on stage, get to be with people, get off stage. Even the meet and greet was just, so many just beautiful humans. There was just so much beautiful energy. And I feel like what we were all starved of for the last 18 months was a feeling of love, because everyone felt so empty that they didn't know where to give and get love from. But I'll tell you right now that the people that I just met, they had a lot of love to give. And there were thousands of them, a couple of thousand people in there who had a lot of love to give. And it just shows me that no matter how hard it's been, everyone's got love. So I feel I haven't worked on my skill set for the last 18 months of being on stage. I feel like you should never stop working on your strengths. A good example is Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, he's 36 years old, and for anyone who watches the Premier League, the guy is just phenomenal. If it comes to work ethic and refining your skill, like, my role model is Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't think anyone works harder than him. I don't think anyone tries to sacrifice everything else for the art as much as him. And so that's what inspires me, that, when you do what you love, you're not complacent about it. You don't take it for granted. You actually constantly try and get better at it. Then I realized that even though having the skills was one thing, but then having something you were passionate about to talk about, that's what changed my life. When I think about younger generations, if you grew up watching your favorite people and you knew they were all friends, how does that change the game now? Because if you're seeing your favorite people fight each other and battle it out for the crown, what are you going to do with the person sitting right next to you at school? And I think I saw that so much growing up, where I've always wanted to connect with people regardless of what we do in this space, but you saw so many people who are coming at it from the perspective of, let's see who does better. Let's see who does more. And again, I love what you said. Competition's not a bad thing. Let's not give it a bad name. But the idea that we've got to be able to hold two truths. We can compete and still be friends.
Still be friends.
It was all about the addiction to number one.
Yes.
It's this idea, and you'll love this. There was a study that I saw that said, because you brought up the Olympics, it sparked my brain. There's a study that I saw that said people who win bronze are happier than people who win silver. Because the people who came second were this close to first.
Oh my God, yeah.
But the person who came third, they were happy. They were like, we weren't going to get first.
Yeah.
But we got in, we got on the podium.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that podium syndrome of like, at least we got on. But the person in silver, they are mad at themselves because they didn't get number one.
Yeah.
And so that addiction to number one is so strong. Don't miss an opportunity to tell someone how much they mean to you. Like just don't, and I said it better than that somewhere, I can't find it right now, but I mean that, like just don't miss an opportunity. Like I was saying that with my mentor, I always told him I loved him, always. And now that I can't tell him anymore, I'm just glad I did tell him.
You're not regretting it.
Yeah, totally. So like don't ever leave someone without telling them how much they mean to you, because you don't know when they'll leave.
Oh.
And so like that is just like, never let your last interaction with someone, you know,
be a bad one.
Be a bad one.
Opportunity to express love or just generosity.
Exactly, especially the people you love, right? Like you may have bad interactions with people you once or twice or a business, but the people that are close to you and you love, the people you'll regret it with, don't. It's just not worth living with. The first thing I'd say is I think everyone needs the feeling that they can just come up for some air. Life can often feel like someone's literally drowning you and you feel like you're drowning and floundering, especially if you're in an extreme case of anxiety or stress or depression. And I feel like you just need to feel like you can just come up for a tiny bit of air. So for that, in the book, I talk about the 3S model, which is your sights, sense, and sounds. What we see, what we hear, and what we smell has a profound impact on our mental state, and we actually underestimate our sense. And I'll give you an example. All of us have been walking around with masks, and someone said this to me the other day, and it hit me. They were saying to me that now that we all wear masks and do this the whole time, I think my mask over there, they were doing this all the time, they realized they couldn't hear people properly. And the reason they couldn't hear people properly is they realized they don't use their ears, they use their eyes to see people's lips. And so actually, they're not even using their ears that much. They're using their eyes to follow the lips and know what someone's saying. So actually, we depend so much on our eyes in every interaction. How many times have you been looking at someone attractive and you forgot what they were talking about? Right? You're just so engaged with your eyes that you completely even forgot to listen. Right? Or you're so lost in the vision of something again and you're in a daze, you can't smell anything. You can't taste anything. So we've got to learn to reactivate our senses. So I'll give an example of what I mean. As monks, our life was sight designed, sound designed, and scent designed. What's the first thing you see when you wake up in the morning? For 80% of people, the first thing they see in the morning is their phone, and the last thing they see at night is their phone. That is poor sight design because you don't even choose what the first message of the day your mind receives.
That actually made my stomach drop. That's a gnarly thought.
It's true,
yeah.
Right? Imagine the last thing someone sees is not their partner or their spouse or the person they sleep with. They see their phone. And the first thing in the morning they look at is their phone. And guess what? It's not a good sight because you're looking at a message that you didn't design for your mind. You're looking at a picture or an image that maybe came through on your Instagram feed that you didn't choose for your mind. So now you've started your day with envy, jealousy, comparison, competition, collab, like all of the monkey mind stuff. And the monkey mind's excited. The monkey mind's on. The monkey mind's like, yeah, we're ready to go. And now you've started the day with the monkey mind. So my advice is, start your day with a quote that you love. Start your day with a picture of someone that you love or your family. Start your day with a work of art that inspires you. Start your day with seeing the first thing that you see. Make it so closely connected to your soul and your goal and your purpose that your monk mind naturally comes alive. So as monks, the first thing that we saw was sometimes a teaching that we'd keep next to us. It might be a spiritual text where I just ripped it out of a book and stuck it there next to my bed, so I woke up to that. Just wake up to something that you actually want to see when you wake up, and make it intentional and make it focused. It could even be a reminder on a sticky note. I remember for a long time, I had one when I was a monk that said, I am not this body. Just to disconnect from the fact that I was more than this body. And because we didn't have mirrors in the ashram, it was very easy to forget I was this body. Or I've had other ones that say to me, I'm exactly where I need to be. And I've read that in the morning. And that just reminds me, because so often I wake up feeling anxious that I'm behind on my day or I'm late. And then I actually make up a mess. Whereas if I read, I'm exactly where I need to be, and I remind myself, I can start my day there. So that's sight. And that's simple, easy for anyone to do. You don't have to change your mind, you don't need to meditate, you don't have to do anything. The second one is, let's talk about scent design. Now, one of the things I've been missing during quarantine is going to a spa or going to like a resort, because I love massages and I love spas and like me and my wife love getting away. And if you think about it, whenever you go into a spa or a massage space or whatever they're called, or a resort, you can always feel relaxed from the moment you walk in just through the power of scent. It could be the most basic room in the world, but a scent can literally illuminate a whole room. So scents like eucalyptus, lavender, sandalwood, if you've got a diffuser or a candle, and you can make this a part of your routine, before you start your workday, just have a candle that you breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out for 4 seconds. Have a diffuser in your room that just makes you feel calm, because as soon as you walk in. One thing I've been doing is putting eucalyptus drops into my showers and turning into a natural steam, and I just feel like completely relieving all my sinuses and feeling calm. These are just really practical things you can do to just ease yourself into it. And the third one's sound. This one's so powerful. Sound is underestimated, because now we just have music playing all the time in the background, and the music may not even be intentional, and the lyrics are all over the place, and you've got instruments that are not being played well or in harmony, and you get a pump or like a boost out of it. And I learned about sound in the ashram, and we had sound design. We would wake up to nature sounds. And nature's so aligned with your body and mind. If you look at nature, if you breathe in with the ocean, your breath will just be exactly where it needs to be. If you allow yourself to just be present with the wind, you'll feel your body just slow right down and be calm. Nature just has this amazing way of teaching so many lessons. And so when I lived in New York City, I often found myself getting exhausted, and I started looking into it, and I was thinking, what is it? I work out, I do all this stuff. And I realized that, especially in New York, we deal with a lot of insignificant sound. Something called cognitive load, where your brain is processing irrelevant, insignificant sound of trucks, horns, construction work, and drilling. And so when your ears are trying to make sense of insignificant sound, you're losing energy in an irrelevant way. And so sound design means every room in your home, have a song that plays or music that plays in that room that gives you the feeling you want it to have. Another easy way to do that is, before you start work or while you're working, have a song or a playlist that really gets you into the mode that you want to be in when you're doing that. Sound is a beautiful accomplice to any activity you want. So those are 3 simple ways that anyone starting today can bring the ashram to their home by sight, scent, and sound design, because that's how our lives were designed. I encourage so many people that I coach, so many people that I mentor, obviously everyone in my community and audience and everything, to go and follow that, go and live that purpose. And I see time and time again that when I see people trying to live their purpose, they are protected, that things work. When you're playing in your dharma and your purpose, things work, things move, you feel momentum. They happen. And I'm not saying they happen without effort, but they happen, they move. Whereas when you're not, you just constantly feel like you're grinding up against, a wall.
I know, challenges.
Just constant.
So what is your purpose, and when did you discover it?
Good question. What is my purpose is simple. It's always has been not since the beginning, because I discovered it afterwards. My purpose is making wisdom go viral. And I've stuck with that, and I've kept it that way, because to me, and there's more to it, making wisdom go viral through entertainment, I would say, is my purpose, because I believe that is something that is uniquely my goal, impact, and service.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is I'm not limited to a platform. So that can be books, it can be podcasts, it can be TV shows, it can be movies. It's not limited. And this I learned by reading. I was reading after, and this was after my video started to get seen. This wasn't before I did it. It wasn't like I sat down and I wrote this fancy tagline. I was reading Salim Ismail's book called Exponential Organizations. And in this book, he talks about something called an MTP, a massive transformational purpose. And he says that every major person, organization in the world has an MTP. So an MTP has to be aspirational, it has to be massive, and it has to be service and purpose-based. So Google's is organizing the world's information. Notice it doesn't say we're an SEO company. Right. Notice it doesn't say we do Google ads. Right. They're organizing the world's information. Yeah. That's how big they're dreaming. And when you're organizing the world's information, you can do driverless cars, you can do Google Glass, right. You can sell Google ads, whatever it is. And so TED's is ideas worth spreading. That's what they are, that's what they're about. So Jay Shetty is making wisdom go viral. Yeah. That's what I'm dedicated to. When you let go of the past, your past will let go of you. And that's harder to do. Like, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. The way to stop living in the past is start living in the now. So start making plans right now. Start making plans for the future. Start spending time with people who also don't get nostalgic. I remember at one point in my life, I kind of detached from a lot of people who spent a lot of time in the past. Now, they weren't negative people. They always talked about how things used to be great in the old days. You know, nostalgia. That, oh, it felt so good a few years ago. That was the best years of my life. I started to disconnect from that because I realized that I didn't want to be living feeling like the best years of my life were going to be at university and end there, that the best years of my life were as a teenager and end there. I always want every year to be the best year of my life, right? I never wanted to settle or limit myself for the feeling that the best years of my life have already passed. So sometimes it's not even negativity, it's just not allowing us to move forward. And often people try and belittle and devalue their own pain to get out of it. But that actually just slows down the process and then they're back to square one again. So you've got to accept the pain you went through. You've got to accept that you want to heal it. One of the best ways to explain this is how what we search for in our partners or in life is what we did or didn't get from our parents.
That's interesting.
Like literally what we search for, and I've analyzed this in my life a ton and in others, if you look for what you look for in your partner or for what you look for in life through your bosses, any authorities, anyone who has a position of power in your life, is what you didn't or did get from your parents. And so you're creating a life based on your past trauma or your past challenge. That doesn't lead to a positive relationship. I found myself projecting the patterns, the negative patterns that my parents had into my relationship with my wife. That doesn't create a positive experience. And by the way, I'm not blaming any parents in the world. Everyone's figuring it out, so I'm not even blaming my own. But we need to have the awareness of developing the emotional skills that our parents didn't have. So again, reminding ourselves of being aware that we're literally creating lives that will continue in the same direction unless our mindset changes. When you feel envy, when you feel jealousy, you've got three responses, three kind of wired responses in the way you behave. There are more, there's multifaceted layers, but let's start with three. The lowest form is ignorance. You want to complain, you want to compare, you want to criticize, you want to wish like you have it. That's the lowest form of response. That's where we start, and that's okay. And therefore, the first point is just recognizing that that's where we start. A layer up from that, an improvement from that is, okay, that person's going out there and getting it. I'm not just going to mope about the fact that they've got stuff I want. I'm going to work and I'm going to show them. I'm going to compete with them. Right? I'm going to work as hard as they are and see how it gets. But you're still comparing. So you've given up the criticizing aspect. You've given up the fact that you're copying, but you're still complaining. You're still comparing. Higher than that is the fact that you say, actually, let me care about my needs, let me praise that person, and let me become conscious of what I actually need, right? Let me not complain, let me not compare, let me not criticize, but let me become conscious, become self-aware of what direction is my life going into? What is it that I truly want to achieve? Where is it that I really want to go? Start creating self-awareness around those things. And naturally, you start to remove envy. So you've got the ignorance layer From that, you've got the impulse layer, and the highest, you've got the insightful layer, right? So you've got ignorance, impulse, and insight. We want to be at insight. We want to move away from ignorance. We want to move away from impulse. You want to move higher and higher to higher consciousness, to insight. Imagine everyone in the world operated on the level of insight, right? That insight, that self-conscious awareness, self-care, compassion. You'd be oozing it out of yourself to absolutely everyone around you. If you want a specific new life, or you have a path that seems interesting to you, you have to spend more time on that path than around the other people. And so even though I didn't spend a lot of time with the monks every year, that time was really deep in the sense that I was fully immersed. Even if I was there for a week or 2 weeks or a month, I was following the whole program. I was waking up at 4 a.m. I was having the cold showers. I was sleeping in the same way. I wasn't going there and treating it like a vacation. I was going there and doing the work. So in your case, I'm guessing that when you were writing a blog, you were writing a blog really well. You were trying to build a business really well. You were following your path with a sense of intensity. And even when you're not getting the results, or in my case, I couldn't just live as a monk for the whole year, that intensity was so strong that I'd come back really charged with all my answers and all my voices in my head saying, no, I know why I'm doing this. And so I was really certain because of my immersiveness. And I think a lot of us, we want to be certain, but we're not obsessed. And it's hard to be certain when you're not obsessed. You can't be half in, half out in your practice of something you want to be, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's a creator, whether it's a CEO, or whether it's even a parent. Like all of those roles are really powerful, but they're really hard to do when you're kind of half in, half out. And so for me, that was the first thing. I was fully immersed in who I wanted to be.
Rule number 2 was take a look in the karma mirror. And you started it right off because the word karma, we have this association with it, but there's a misconception about what it really means.
Yeah, I think that we have a very limited understanding of a lot of Eastern concepts and Eastern words. And I was very fortunate, having lived as a monk for 3 years. I spent a lot of time studying the Vedas and spiritual literatures that give insight and depth to these concepts and words that we now hear, like we hear kismet or karma, or all these words are thrown around in the Western world, but we don't necessarily have the most thorough understanding of the word. And so karma is often, what goes around comes around. I think there's that great Justin Timberlake song, right? Like it's like whatever you do, you get it back. There's some truth in that, but that's not fully what it is. So karma is this cycle of impressions forming into ideas, forming into patterns in our life. So let me break down what I mean by that. When you make a choice in your life, that choice has a certain reaction or a certain consequence. And that consequence is there to teach you about whether you choose to do that again. So let's use that for health. When I see a fried burger with a bunch of fries with a sugary drink right there in the evening, and I get attracted to that and I'm like, that's what I want to eat tonight, I make that choice in the moment. It feels amazing. But then the next morning, I don't feel as good. That consequence is not I got what I give out. That consequence was for me to reflect on, do you want to eat that again? Next time when you have that choice, that's what you're going to choose. And so I feel like that's what karma is trying to do. So sometimes you make a choice and we don't look at how we make choices. We focus far more on the result. So let's think about this. How many times have you ever dated someone later on to realize that they were the wrong person? But you never went back to think about how you made the decision to be with them. You were just really upset that they were the wrong person and they hurt you or whatever they did. But what if you went back and said, oh, actually, I chose to be with them because they were controlling and that made me feel safe. Oh, wait a minute, I chose to be with them because they kind of took care of everything and fixed all my problems. So I thought that they knew what they were doing. Oh, wait a minute, I chose to be with them because I was in a weak place and therefore they made me feel a sense of safety and certainty and I let them do that. Oh, now next time I make a decision to be with someone, let me make sure that I'm not basing it on that criteria. Let me actually go in as an equal. So that's what karma is trying to get you to have that reflection.
What do you do in those spiritual retreats?
Usually I like going to the eco village in Palghar, Vada, and I like just switching off. I literally won't be on my phone. I'll completely unplug. And I like to just go back to living in a meditative, monk-like way, in the way that I used to. And to be able to just wake up at 4 a.m. every day, meditate again for many hours, reflect, journal, introspect. I find that getting to do that for 2 to 3 weeks a year is such a great reset. I find that naturally because of our careers, we're always on our phones and we're always plugged in, and that's great and that's fantastic. But I think once a year, it's so powerful to just completely switch off. So I won't reply to any emails. I won't check my text messages. We will have pre-prepared our content in advance so that people are still served and the community's taken care of, but I don't have to worry about any of that. I remember after I had my first viral video, I didn't want to make any videos.
Really? Why?
Because you're scared of success. Like you're scared of...
But weren't you excited? You're like, oh, 50 million views. Like all these people.
You get... Well, that's the point, right? Like at one point, it has to become about more than the success or failure. And that's where the meaningful mission, it comes back to that, right?
Yeah.
It always comes back to that. And I was talking about this with our friend, and we talked about you too. It's so funny. I was talking to Stephen Bartlett recently because I was in London, and we talked about you too because we were talking about relationships. And he was saying what he'd learned from you and the conversations you guys have had, and now I'm talking about him to you. But I was talking to him about the idea of just like getting comfortable with the idea that at one point we all have to embrace insignificance and irrelevance in a public sense, but that in an internal sense, the meaningful mission was what was carrying you.
Yes.
So if you stop because people stop following, or if you start only when people are following, then there isn't a meaningful mission. Because the meaningful mission is what you were doing, whether people were following or not, because it's what you wanted to do and who you wanted to be. And so I think it comes back to that if you only play when you're winning and you stop when you're losing, or you don't pivot and learn a new way to serve, then there isn't a meaningful mission at the bedrock of it. And so I love that the meaningful mission is at the heart of everything, because there will always be changes. Like the platforms will change, the algorithms will change.
People will come and go.
People will come and go. And you see the people that have lasted the test of time, it's usually people who have a meaningful mission, as you were saying, who want to keep serving, keep giving. They feel they have that.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video, because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Guru Gopal Das, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Please stop being overly obsessed with being happy. There is no need to be happy all the time. Please stop being overly obsessed with being positive. There is no need to be positive.